So we saved $18 million in estate taxes in this example. Who would rather pay $18 million less to the government? I'm Jeff Versace. I'm an estate planning attorney, and really my story of why I got into what I got into had a lot to do with family. My mother passed on when I was 9 from cancer. My father was a busy doctor, and then without a second thought, my grandparents, my father's parents, moved in and helped raise me and my sister, and it was just, there was no question about it. They just did it. So I always tell my clients, look, grandparents are special, but I'm going to say mine are extra special. So that summer between undergrad and law school is when my grandfather was sick, and also he ended up passing on from cancer about a week and a half before I had to throw everything into the back of the car and just drive off to law school. And my grandmother, she was so proud that her grandson was in law school. She gave me one day for orientation and then started calling me up and asking me questions about the estate. I guess she figured I walked through the front doors, they dumped all the legal knowledge in me, I was F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, and oh, wait a minute, no, it doesn't work like that. So I learned pretty quickly, if you ask any first-year law student a question, doesn't matter what the question is, they are very, very likely going to give you exactly the same answer, and that answer is, I don't know, let me look it up in the law library. So every couple of weeks, my grandmother's calling and asking questions, and the reason she was calling me, even though she had an attorney, was every time she called the attorney, she got an answer that she didn't understand, and she got a bill for it. So if I could help save my grandmother, who did so much for me, of course I'm going to do that. And so I spent a lot of time running around the law library trying to figure this stuff out. It was a year and a half later, I stopped. I'm like, this is still going on? A year and a half later, stuff is tied up in probate court. Why is this taking so long? Why is this so frustrating? Why is this so expensive? And the one thing she said that really stuck with me is she said, I don't feel like my house is really mine until this thing is over. And that was a horrible feeling. I could see it in her eyes. And so I started doing my own research. Now I knew two things as a law student. One was I was going to do everything I can to start my own practice. And two, part of it is going to be planning to avoid these types of problems. And it turned out that was going to be the biggest part of what I did in my practice. So that's how I kind of came to what I'm doing today. It's helping people avoid problems. One of the biggest ones is avoiding probate, but there are also so many tax and other types of loopholes that people can take advantage of if they know the rules. And that's why I'm really happy to be a part of this one.
If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I'm going to stand up because my hands wave around because I'm Italian and I don't want to hit Melanie and Glenn while I'm going over this. So, the big thing that we do a lot in my practice is revocable living trusts, and it's to avoid probate. And this is what my grandmother actually did. So my grandfather's estate took more than a year and a half to settle. Hers was like 6 weeks, done. And really, probate costs eat up generally 4 to 10% of an estate, so it's not a tax. Maybe it's a tax that goes to the attorney that does the paperwork. So if you want to avoid that part of it, okay. With a married ABC trust, so if you're a couple, you want to make sure you're using both of your tax coupons. So the trust is managed by both spouses when you set it up initially, move assets into it, and then when one spouse passes on, it kind of gets split between an A trust and a B trust. And sometimes there's a C if it's an overflow. The B trust is where you're using the first deceased spouse's estate tax coupon. So it's applying it at that point. And then when the second spouse passes on, it's using their estate tax credit as well, so you've effectively doubled it up. I see this mistake far too often when widows or widowers come in and they've got a big estate and they didn't do any of this stuff for the first spouse. So let's talk about this other thing that's out there called portability. And it's the next great thing, it's perfect, you don't have to do this married ABC trust. And basically, portability is when the first spouse passes on, they can do an estate tax return, make an election, and they can move their deceased spouse's estate tax credits over to them. Oh, great, so I'm doubling it up. But wait a minute, how are you doubling it up? Here's what it looks like with the married ABC trust. Let's just say it's $24 million total when the first spouse passes on. Okay, half goes to the A, half goes to the B. We apply the estate tax credits to that B trust. Surviving spouse lives another 14 years. The money is doubling twice, quadrupling over that time period. Great. The B trust now has $48 million. There's no estate taxes. So all of that growth is off the table for estate taxes. The spouse, let's just say they were conscious of taxes, they spent or they gifted away money, and it now that A trust has $24 million. Okay, that's still going to have about $10 million in estate taxes. So that's a lot of money, but okay. If we did portability, they just moved the estate tax credits over. First spouse dies, they keep everything, there's no B trust, they use that portability, the spouse lives another 14, same example. The money's quadrupling. So the estate went from $24 million to $96 million total, not spread out among two trusts. Spent and gifted the same $24 million. Well, now we're talking about $28 million in estate taxes because all of that growth in the B trust, that's now with the spouse. So we saved $18 million in estate taxes in this example. Who would rather pay $18 million less to the government? I don't know anybody who would want to pay more than they have to. Now, here's another potential strategy, and I call it in-law protection planning. I don't know what your situations were, but after the COVID lockdowns, and I had my clients coming to me, there was about a 1.5 year period where everyone was like, I didn't realize that my son-in-law or my daughter-in-law was this horrible, miserable person. Maybe my kid's going through a divorce. But I need to make sure that if I'm leaving money to my child, that it can't go to that spouse. They can't do that planning with my money. I want, if there's anything left over, I want it to go to the grandkids. I want it so they can't give it to that miserable person. All right? What we do is we set up asset management trusts for the kids. So in this example, we've got Jennifer, Jefferson, and Jim. The revocable living trust doesn't give them their inheritance directly. It goes into these 3 asset management trusts. Now, tax reasons, you also want IRA trusts so that you can spread the tax out over the maximum 10-year period, but still have it qualified and protected inside the trust from divorce, lawsuits, all this other stuff. So this is the setup, but the tax boost that often gets missed, it's a generation skipping tax. Who here has heard of the generation skipping tax? Yeah. Basically, this was to prevent very wealthy families when they first started the estate tax from saying, well, we're not going to give anything to the kids. We're going to give it to the oldest grandchild. And now they'll take care of their parents and aunts and uncles. And we will skip a whole round of estate taxes. And Congress said, oh, no. If you skip over those people, it's a 55% tax. But we've got all these credits. You can have up to that amount. It's the same as the estate tax. So if you apply the generation skipping tax credits here, when it goes down to the grandkids, It's not going to be taxed at the kids level either. So you have effectively avoided a whole generation of estate taxes. Now, the way these trusts work, the assets are available to the beneficiaries during their lifetime. So whatever's left, it's going to go to the next generation. But for that kid's generation, it's protected across the board. Now, here's another strategy that's worth taking a look at because, like Glenn said, the taxes are on sale until the end of 2025. Right now, the estate and gift tax exemptions are $12.96 million per person. That's going to get cut in half at the end of 2025. So, what about gifting a large amount now? I have some clients that are stopping and taking a look. If we can give a huge part of the estate, it can go into this special kind of gifting trust. And the way that has to work, because you've got to get the kids on board with this, they have a right to take the money out, but they're going to sign off that they're not going to do it. And it's going to stay in there and it grows. So you're using those tax credits before they disappear. The growth is going to not be part of your taxable estate because this is a completed gift, permanent. And then, when you pass on, it goes down to those asset management trusts. So it's got all of that protection. It's going to still apply the GST exemptions, and you're taking advantage of using those tax credits that are going to disappear. So just a strategy worth looking at. So IRA and a life insurance strategy. How many people here have heard life insurance is tax-free? Have you heard that phrase? It's income tax-free. But if you own the life insurance policy, that payout becomes part of your taxable estate. So an irrevocable life insurance trust can be set up kind of much in the same way this one is. So you're gifting the premiums in each year. The kids are signing off, we don't want it because it's going to fund a big life insurance policy. And then when you pass on, all that money in the life insurance trust is not part of your taxable estate.
Get excited. Just got charitable trust.
There is so much that can be done with charities because they don't pay taxes. So if you can set up a charitable remainder trust to transfer highly appreciated property. Now, I used to do an awful lot of these when I had clients who were in business and they put buildings that they depreciated, but it works with highly appreciated stock too. This is an irrevocable trust. Designates a charity as the beneficiary. The charitable remainder trust will end up selling that investment, whatever it is, and they don't pay any capital gains taxes, no ordinary income, and it ends up giving you a stream of income. So let's go ahead and take a look as an example of a way to do this at a supersized level. Greg, he currently has an IRA of $2.2 million. He's 83, life expectancy of 9 years. His IRA balance predicted at death, with his distributions coming out, is about $2 million, $2,030,000. His net rate of return, 7%. So the current children's age, 51, 58, and 60. Where do you think he wants to leave his IRA? To his kids, right? Well, instead, we have the IRA go to a charitable remainder trust, and now the kids are getting income for the rest of their lives. $33,833 each. So if the kids had gotten it directly, they would have had 10 years to take it out. So let's take a look at the comparison. So, okay, if you just name the kids, they got it, they had to pay the tax, the lifetime after tax, $3,429,768. They're getting $6 million. Income taxes, $1.2 million, $445,000. What does the family get at the end of the day? more than $1 million more. By getting it to a charity. How many people here think that Bill and Melinda Gates with the charity, that they somehow weren't actually coming out ahead? It's because they know the loopholes and they can do stuff like this.